Hey, what's up, guys? Blaine Duncan here from Halloween Lives, the podcast of Michael Myers, joined, as always, by my brother, Austin. Welcome to episode 53. We are officially in season 2 of the Halloween Lives podcast of Michael Myers. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's crazy. We're going into year 2. Obviously, thank you to everybody who showed love on the last video, on our Instagram. Everything wishing us well after 1 year of talking nothing but Michael Myers every single week, and no breaks. We're right back at it. Nothing's changing around here.
That's right.
We're just back to giving you the same Michael Myers content every single week.
That's right. That's right. And we do have some really, it's not breaking news anymore. This news is 4 or 5 days old, but it's going to be breaking news for the podcast that just this last week, there has been some news in the Halloween world. And that is that the director of Halloween 4, Dwight Little, has come out and said that he is interested in potentially directing, whether it be the Halloween TV series that we may be getting or directing another Halloween film. But Dwight Little has apparently approached Trancas or Malek Akkad and made a pitch for an idea for a film. So we saw this news break here in this last week. And dude, I'm first off, like, I love the fact that we really don't have anything that is real well known to be in the works with the franchise right now. I mean, we know things are coming, but we just don't know what they are at this point. But when we get little snippets of news like this, it's just like a little glimmer of hope. You know, it's like we're sailing, we've set out to sea and we got lost at sea, and like the rations and the food are running low. We don't have any more bottled water. But then it's like, you know, somebody digs in their luggage and like, oh, hey, check this out. I got one more bottle of water. That's what I feel like we're at right now with the Halloween franchise. It's like just the slightest little information is just a little glimmer of hope for what this franchise looks like in the future. But dude, how are you feeling about this? Like, are you down for Dwight Little directing the next Halloween film?
Yeah, so that's, you know, you and I just kind of briefly talked about it over text, but we haven't really spoken to each other on what our thoughts are yet. So yeah, I think my initial thought is like, if everybody's down to yet again split the timeline, assuming that this would be a sequel to Halloween 4 if it were the movie side, you know, I'm down for it. I love, you know, hopefully they could get Danielle Harris back as Jamie, but I think it would be obviously just another really fun way to go down. I'm nervous of the fatigue of too many timelines. But obviously there's a lot you could do with that I think would be really cool. As far as the TV show, I think that's a shoo-in for anybody that's developing the TV show. Like, of course, we're going to let this guy either, you know, lead director or direct a couple episodes of the first season. Especially like a guy like that not only came into the franchise trying to reinvigorate it and bring the nostalgia of the original movie back after, you know, kind of a mixed response on Halloween 3. But definitely like a guy who's clearly capable of making a true to form Halloween sequel. We've talked plenty on this show that Halloween 4 is easily one of the best sequels that we have. You know, sometimes in some areas surpassing the original that we love so much. You know, I can't think of a better guy. Obviously, if John Carpenter wanted to come back and do a couple more, would be pumped for that too. I don't think that's happening. This is pretty sweet, dude, and this is pretty big. Like you said, this is the little morsel of hope that we got coming down the pipeline. We know nothing about what's going to come in the next couple of years with this franchise. Obviously, we'll be talking about anything and everything on this show. But what do you think, dude?
I'm so excited. Like, once again, this is that little glimmer of hope. But you know, you said it. What you just said was perfectly said. If I could pick any director out of the entire franchise to come back and direct it, of course, JC, right? John Carpenter is the man. I want to come back and do that. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I don't think we're ever going to get that opportunity. I think the closest we probably ever came or will come to seeing him involved in this franchise again is what we just got with the latest trilogy, him being involved with the music. And I think he was a producer or EP on it. I can't remember, but he was involved with it to a certain extent. I don't think we're going to ever get that again, with any of this. I think I look at kind of how he, I don't want to use the word snubbed, because snubbed is not the right word, but how he, the whole H45 thing, right? He waited. It was like this big thing where nobody knew that he was coming. And then he waited till the very end. And then it was just like this last day, kind of last minute thing where he showed up. It just tells me he really doesn't want anything to do with the franchise anymore. That he's done it and he just wants to kind of move on with his life, which I get. He doesn't want to be remembered for just one thing, but let's face it, that's what the majority of us will remember him for. Dwight Little, on the other hand, though he does have some other bigger movies that have come out, including Free Willy 2. Did you know that Free Willy 2 was directed by Dwight Little? Free Willy 2, he just came out with another one, Natty Knox, that actually has Danielle Harris in it. I saw that was just released. You can watch it on Tubi, so we're going to check that out at some point. But, this would be a huge opportunity for, I'm sure, Dwight in his career to come back to the franchise that really helped kick his career off. I would be all for it. You said it, that Halloween 4, personally for me, is my favorite sequel of the entire franchise. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, and I'm not afraid to say it, even if it's an unpopular opinion, that if they hadn't have jacked up the mask in that movie, there is a chance, not saying officially, but there is a chance it could be my favorite Halloween film of the entire franchise. But because that mask was so bad, I can never say that, right? And I mean, the original is the original. It's never probably going to be beaten, but that is, I think, as close as I will ever get to liking one of the other movies more than the original. And I think that had a lot to do with, it had a lot to do with the screenwriting as well. I thought it was a very well written movie. The ambiance of that film is freaking fantastic. I don't know that we have another Halloween film that just feels like fall. It feels like autumn and Halloween. The opening, we've talked about that 1,000 times. You can't freaking beat it. So, dude, sign me up for Dwight Little, whether it's another movie, whether it's a TV series, whatever it might be. Sign me up. Give the dude a chance to come back and do what he has to do to put a bow on his stamp, if you will, on this franchise, because I just think that would be so cool. So, what do you guys think? Do you guys want to see Dwight Little come back and direct a film or another Halloween film or the TV series or whatever we might get? Are you guys interested in seeing that? Let us know in the comments below, because I have read a few comments of people online saying they want nothing to do with that, which I thought was really interesting. And respect to everybody's opinions. Some people might disagree with yours or mine. But it was really interesting to see that some people were like very adamant about they did not want him to come back. They don't want the sort of 2.0 version of Jamie Lloyd, which is what I would want. Like, if Dwight Little comes back, give me 2.0 Jamie Lloyd. Like, that's what I want. I don't necessarily want him to create a different film or a spin-off or anything like that. Like, I want to once again put a bow on that story of Jamie Lloyd and hopefully see that come to fruition someday. And we know Danielle Harris is interested, right? And I'm sure she's been asked it 1,000 times. I asked her out at age 45. I said, you want to get this thing done? And she said, yes. So hopefully we can cross our fingers. We're going to get a sequel at some point to H4. Now, whether that comes through a TV series or a film, that's yet to be determined. But either way, I'm excited as shit to have some brand new Halloween franchise news to share on the podcast and to give us something to talk about. And I think we've talked about this before. Like, right now we're in this hangover stage of the David Gordon Green trilogy. We're whether you like the films, whether you didn't like the films, whatever it is, it's this Halloween hangover. And we're here to cure that Halloween hangover by giving you more Michael Myers talk week after week. But I really am looking forward to the day when we say, hey, the hangover is gone. We're going back to the bar to have a few more drinks. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I look forward to the day you and I are breaking down the trailer for whatever comes next, whether that's the TV show or the movies. I'm just looking forward to that next moment, the excitement We've talked before that, like, why didn't we start this podcast in 2018 when like there would have been so much new stuff? We could have been wrong on all of our takes and just gone through that excitement. But everything happens for a reason. We are here for that hangover. But yeah, there's some dreams of drinks in the future.
That's right,
coming down the pipeline. So
we should also mention, kind of changing the subject very slightly, is that our good friend Dominic Cousineau Benoit. I'm never going to say it. Cousineau. Thank you. At least one of us is intelligent. Dominic, who directed Halloween Stocks, he's been on the program a couple times with us, 3 times actually, including the live. Was he here for Live 25? I believe it was
Live 25.
Yeah, so we've had him on the program 3 times. If you guys have not seen the original, if you've not seen Halloween Stocks on YouTube, go to YouTube right now, type in Halloween Stocks. Trust us, it's going to be the best 15 minutes of your life. It's a great fan film, the best fan film I've ever seen in my entire life. And that includes the really awesome Don't Camp Alone or Don't Camp in the Woods Alone or whatever the hell, what's it called?
Don't hike alone.
Don't hike alone, whatever.
Don't camp in the woods alone.
Don't do anything alone. Don't do anything alone. It includes that. So I'm just giving props to Dominic. That dude, that film was awesome. He's coming out with Halloween Stocks 2 and just dropped the trailer. Holy shit, does this thing look awesome. Looks like a legitimate film, a legitimate Halloween film. You can check that out by going to YouTube or check out Dominic's Instagram page, which I'm sure is linked through his YouTube. And Austin was involved in a little way in designing. Well, you were involved in a big way in designing the logo, but just in terms of the whole thing, you're involved in a little sliver of it, but actually designing the logo for Halloween Stocks 2. And it was really cool to see that as well, just knowing that you put your fingerprints on that thing.
It's weird because it's almost like I know what went into just the logo, so I'm like, okay, that part is less exciting for me now. Watching the trailer, dude, like you said, this is like it looks like for a while I got caught up in my own head of like, oh my god, I can't wait to go to the theaters and watch this. Like Halloween is back. Right. It's guys like Dominic that are also helping that Halloween hangover. I really can't wait for it. The details I know about this film now, Dominic has shared a lot with me that obviously he's asked me not to share. But I still don't know how the whole movie ends. And I am just looking forward so much to seeing that. I mean, it really does. And to this community, it is like it's bigger than a normal fan film. I mean, there are I think a lot of people in this fandom are incredibly inspired by the Halloween franchise and want to throw their hat in the ring as far as fan films and their own creative expression of this universe goes. So there's plenty of people always throwing out fan films, and they're always great. But the excitement you get with Halloween Stocks 2 has been on another level, and I can't think of more deserving director than Dominic to be getting that. It looks freaking incredible. It looks like it belongs in a movie theater, and I think he's going to do our boy Michael Myers justice.
That's right. Check out Dominic's trailer for Halloween Stocks 2. Just go to YouTube and type in Halloween Stocks 2. That film comes out, I believe it's March 14th or March 15th. It's right around the middle of March. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but check that out because you are not going to want to miss that. We'll be doing a breakdown at some point of that once it's released. And everybody go check out Dominic's work. We are going to transition to what we're actually here to talk about tonight. Going back to Halloween 4, we're going to be talking about some of the maybe lesser known or lesser known facts, I guess, about the Halloween 4 film. Some of them you may have heard of, some of them you may have not. I have a list of 35, and I wish I could come up with the name of the author who did this. So I apologize. If you know who this is, tag us in the comments. I don't know who put this list together. I didn't do it. Not trying to plagiarize, not trying to steal anybody's shit, but I don't know who put this list together because it doesn't say, but I have a list of 35. I know Austin, we talked about previously. Yeah. For Christmas, that was one of your gifts I got you was this book. You were reading through it a little bit tonight, kind of getting some ideas for some tidbits. I don't know how many you came up with, but we're just going to roll with it for the next 40 minutes or so and talk about some Halloween 4 facts that you may not have known about. So let's just get right into this thing. Let me pull up the link here. So when we're talking about Halloween 4, I think for the most part, most people like this film. You really, outside of, we had Sean Clark on the show, and he said he was not a fan. Really surprised me. Again, to each their own. I don't really care, but I think for the most part, most people tend to be fans of this film. So let's get into this and find out if there are any facts within this this list that you, Austin, or any of our viewers, listeners, don't know about. So let's get into it. Number one, following the fan backlash at the lack of Michael Myers in Halloween 3, executive producer Mustafa Akkad struggled with how to continue the franchise, but decided that the only way forward was to bring Michael Myers back, especially since it would be released exactly 10 years after the original. So we talked about this a few episodes ago, that there was this newspaper clipping, and you can find it online, but there was this printed in this newspaper was this thing that announced that Michael was coming back, and it was this kind of black and white, obviously, image from a newspaper, and I think it was on a front porch with like a pumpkin, and then there was like this note that was like stabbed to either to the pumpkin or to like the one of the beams of the porch or something, but it said like, hey, you're invited to my Halloween party next year. But then it was signed Michael Myers, Meyers, not Michael Myers. And I think about that, and I'm like, how would you screw something like that up? You've had, since 1981, so you did 7 years at this point to really get this thing right. I guess maybe 6 years, because that would have probably been in like 87 that they announced it. But you screw up the name Michael Myers. Terrible.
Yeah, it's like Michael Jordan coming back and spelling his own name back when he wrote the "I'm back" then or whatever. No.
Just stupid. Number two, initially, John Carpenter wrote a treatment for the film that focused heavily on the town of Haddonfield itself and the psychological trauma the events of the first two films had on the townspeople. However, the idea was rejected, and thus Carpenter wasn't involved at all. Could you imagine me and John Carpenter in that situation? Like, mother effer, I am the godfather of this franchise, and you're going to reject my idea? Could you imagine that? Could you imagine sitting across from John Carpenter and be like, hey, listen, John, this is no good. You're going to just grab your shit and go.
It's insane. I can't imagine telling the guy who created this character that, like, yeah, that's good, but we're going to go a different direction. We don't think you know best. This guy built it up from the ground. He was like Steve Jobs in a garage. I don't know.
Pretty interesting. And we'll get into a few of these. We'll talk about this a little bit more as we go, but there were a few different scripts and screenplays, treatments, things like that were created for this. And some of them were pretty interesting. Some of them had Laurie Strode involved. Some of them were about Tommy and Lindsay, which I think would have been really cool. But ultimately, we ended up going with the daughter of Jamie, or of Laurie Strode, being Jamie Lloyd. We ended up getting that whole story. So number three, back when Carpenter was involved, his first choice for director would have been Joe Dante. Google search who Joe Dante is. I didn't do my homework, but Dante, Joe Dante. For some reason, I feel like I know that name. And it must be a fairly big name.
Yeah, he's pretty big. Oh, he's got Gremlins 2. Oh, yeah, he did Piranha.
Okay. Yeah, I know who he is then. Okay. All right. So interesting. So Joe Dante would have been Carpenter's first choice to direct Halloween 4 if he had gotten his way. Very interesting.
He did Tales of Halloween as well, which I actually enjoy that movie.
I do too. Yeah, I do too. I that's one of those movies I'll feel like, I'll be honest, it starts to get a little bit long for me. Like when I'm watching it, I'm kind of like, okay, let's get this. Especially that last story, like the pumpkin that like attacks people, and I don't dig that story so much. But there's some good stories within Tales of Halloween. I definitely like that. Number 4, Jamie Lee Curtis turned down the offer to reprise the role of Laurie Strode. At this point, Curtis's career had really taken off, and she didn't want to be involved with the franchise anymore. However, she would eventually return several more times in later sequels. So one of the films, and I can't remember if we talked about this or not. I know we've done like a what if kind of thing of Halloween 4, or what might have been. We did that about H2O, and I think we did it on part 4 about like what the original idea was for it. And I don't remember if we talked about this one specifically, but originally there was this idea to take the entire thing to Chicago, and it was essentially going to be, Halloween, Michael Myers in Chicago, where Laurie Strode is kind of like, she was like a fashion designer or a fashion photographer or something like that. And the way that it was described was Halloween on cocaine is what I heard.
Mhm.
A lot of rock stars, rock star imagery, things like that. A lot of like leather and just very 80s. And it reminds me, like when I picture that whole thing in my brain, I think Jason Takes Manhattan immediately. Like
100%.
I hear Jason, or I see Jason Takes Manhattan. So we kind of got very close to a Michael Takes Chicago sort of thing. Ultimately, very glad they went the direction that they did, because otherwise we wouldn't have gotten Halloween 4. But I do like that idea of taking Michael out of Haddonfield and putting him in a big city. It could be very interesting. A lot of really probably awesome kills that you could have gotten out of that kind of thing. What would you think about that? Would you be cool with the sequel that takes place in Chicago, in the city?
Dude, we've got plenty of movies where Michael's killing in Haddonfield. I'm totally down to take him anywhere but space. That's my one request.
Dude, and so we've talked about this too, that like John Carpenter has said that that's the only film he would come back for. I still got to believe that's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Like there's no fucking way that John Carpenter is coming back to direct Halloween in space. There's no way.
I think it would make for a great video game. But other than that, but yeah, I wanted to comment on that as well, as far as Jamie Lee Curtis. Got a little note about Jamie Lee Curtis, and I want to shout out this book, Purely and Simply Evil, by Reed Graves. Badass author name for a horror thing. Jamie Lee Curtis was offered the chance to return for this film, but declined. Her comedy hit, A Fish Called Wanda, had just opened up. So, when you got A Fish Called Wanda, why do you need Halloween?
I've never even heard of that movie.
Exactly.
I'm gonna have to Google that. It sounds terrible.
Yep, probably was.
Interesting. Well, she had a lot of big things going on, clearly, between A Fish Called Wanda, or Named Wanda, whatever the hell you said, and Christmas with the Cranks. I'm gonna throw that Christmas with the Cranks in here as much as I possibly can, because it's such a terrible, terrible movie. It hurts the image of Laurie Strode. All right, number 5. The script had to be rushed in 11 days to be completed before the WGA strike of 1988, which lasted from March 7th to August 7th of that year. So I knew that Alan B. McElroy is the writer. He wrote the script, the screenplay for Halloween 4. And I read that he had to like rush through this thing. And if you think about that, like, now I'm sure the script changed afterwards, right? I'm sure before filming and things like that, they tweaked some things and changed some things. But imagine like just like power writing this and being like, I got to get this thing done in 11 days. And apparently he managed to do it before the writer's strike of 88. So very interesting. Also very serendipitous, the fact that we're talking writer's strike in 1988.
Fucking
which
serendipitous.
Big words.
Look at this guy.
I'm getting smarter. But the fact that we had a writer's strike in 88 that delayed some things, and now we just got over a writer's strike, and here we are going, all right, we're still moving this ball down the field. More Halloween stuff is coming. Very interesting. Coincidental.
I also just want to say Halloween 4 pumped out in 11 days, turned out amazing. I keep on hearing the excuses for part 5 and part 6. Oh, it was rushed. It was done this. I don't know, man. I think it's possible.
Yeah. Number 6, an earlier draft of the script had a scene that shows Dr. Loomis surviving the explosion at the end of Halloween 2. So that's kind of cool. Like I heard that this whole thing, I had heard that it was or that they were going to film it, but that they decided not to film it because they needed to recreate the explosion and all this shit, or it was like too much budget, or the budget was not enough for it. Do you know anything different than that?
Yeah, well, not as far as why it wasn't filmed. This book did go into it, and it was one that I wanted to write down as well. Halloween 4 was originally scripted, like you said, to begin with the ending of Halloween 2 in order to show Dr. Loomis being thrown far from the blast, but still alive. As firefighters rushed to extinguish Michael's burning body, Loomis was to have yelled for them to, quote, "Let it burn," similar to what we see Laurie Strode do at the beginning of Halloween Kills.
There you go. Perfect. And that actually takes up my number 7 because that's what I had as well. As the scene included Loomis yelling, "Let him burn," trying to prevent EMS from saving Michael from the fire. The idea was later reused in Halloween Kills.
Oh, wow. God,
Yeah.
we're on
Yeah.
the same wavelength.
We're on the exact same page. Number 8, another earlier version of the script featured Tommy Doyle and Lindsay Wallace as the main characters. This idea would later be revisited in Halloween 6 with the return of Tommy Doyle and Halloween Kills, which brought them both back. So, dude, this is honestly like, if we had to start fresh anywhere, we had to start fresh. I would go back to late 80s, early 90s, whatever it is, and give us that Tommy Doyle, Lindsay Wallace sequel that we should have gotten. Because if you really think about it, first off, Halloween Kills sucked. Okay. Sorry. It sucked. I did not like what they did with those two characters. And I want to see a sequel that does those two characters justice, because that was not what we got in Halloween Kills. They tried to create this character of Tommy Doyle being like this, manly man who's taking charge and he's going to take Haddonfield back, and not tonight. Evil dies tonight and all this bullshit. That sucked. Take me back to post high school, early college years. Lindsay Wallace, Tommy Doyle. Give me that sequel. That is what I want to see. I want to see them come back from their freshman year of college for some fall break, and guess who's back? The Boogeyman. And they have to fight the Boogeyman. Whatever that might be, that's what I want to see.
Yeah, I think it would be great. And I spoke about this during our hot takes. I don't really think either of them have been done justice to what I think is capable for those characters. I mean, I think
right.
I think these are kids that grew up during the tragedy. I mean, obviously Laurie Strode was pretty much a kid in the first film too, but these guys were barely toddlers or barely past being toddlers. And they're getting traumatized for the rest of their lives. I think that's an interesting story to tell, and we didn't ever really explore that and how they overcome it, how they become more real people other than just like, I gotta be the one to kill him. He's coming for me.
Right. Yep, exactly. Number 9, Melissa Joan Hart auditioned for the role of Jamie, but didn't get it. She would go on to be the star of Sabrina, the Teenage Witch. Do you know who Melissa Joan Hart is, or are you too young for this?
No, we used to watch Sabrina the Teenage Witch all the time, but I don't know if she's
TGI Friday, baby. I think that was like ABC TGI Friday when I was a kid. That was huge. Sorry, keep going.
Melissa Joan Hart. I'm trying to see if there's anything else I would recognize her from. No, it doesn't.
Oh, she was big. She was big mid to late 90s, early 2000s. She was in a whole bunch of stuff. She's in a
lot of Christmas movies.
Probably now she's probably like Hallmark B-level actress is probably where she's at, but she was a big name. Like, I remember Melissa Joan Hart when I was a kid. Like, she was on all like the Teen Beat covers and like it was like Teen Beat magazine covers, things like that. She was a really, really popular sort of tween celebrity at that time, probably just a few years older than me, I'm going to guess. But so apparently she came really close to being Jamie Lloyd, which would have been really interesting and probably changed the course of her career as well. Number 10, according to Danielle Harris, her audition was mostly composed of screaming and crying. The producers felt she was right for the role because of her maturity for her age. They wanted to make sure whoever played the role wouldn't be permanently traumatized by the subject matter. So Danielle Harris should have gotten an Oscar for her role here, because she did a freaking fantastic job the way that she portrayed this character. And she, as a little girl, like, you forget the fact that she was only 8 or 9 years old or whatever she was when she was filming this. She's acting like she's been an actor for the last 20 years. Like, she did a fantastic job in this film.
I agree. And I think that was something that really stuck with me this last October when we watch all these movies. I sat down and I think because we've been in the podcast for almost a year at that point, I was trying to look at everything through the lens of everything we've been through, basically. And that was something that stood out, was just this kid in her movie debut is knocking it out of the park. I think, for me, a more relatable character, a more interesting, exciting character to watch as like our lens through this world than Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie Strode in the first movie. Maybe that's a hot take I can save for the next hot takes episode, but I enjoy that character. I think it's a more likable character.
Which is why we need to go back to the Jamie Lloyd character 35 years later. That's the film we need. That's the film we want. That's the film we need. So, yeah. Number 11, prior to landing the role of Jamie Lloyd, Danielle Harris's only acting experience had been on the soap opera One Life to Live. Cool. She was also on, I know for a fact she was on Roseanne, because I remember watching Roseanne back in the day, and she was on there fairly frequently in the later seasons. And I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure she was also on, Jesus Christ, now I'm blanking on the name, Full House. I'm pretty sure she was on Full House also.
She was in Full House?
Yeah.
I was going to check.
Google search Danielle Harris Full House. See if she's on there.
She's in a lot of shit.
She's been, I mean, she was a fairly big. I remember her as a kid before I was into the Halloween franchise. Like I remember her being on other shows.
I see her on Roseanne. I knew it. I thought she was in Boy Meets World.
Maybe that's where. Okay, yeah, that's where she's from. Yep.
Yeah,
that's right.
She was in Boy Meets World. I don't see Full House. Okay. But I mean, and then like the 2000s hit, and she was like full on into the horror thing, and hasn't really left since. Which props to her. That's a cool move. We've seen how it can go other ways.
Yeah, she found her sort of calling, and that's what she stuck with. So very cool. Number 12, during production of Halloween 4, Mustafa Akkad bought out his partners to become a sole owner of the franchise. He would go on to produce every sequel until his tragic death by a terrorist attack in 2005. Afterwards, his son, Malik Akkad, took over producing the franchise onward. So, Mustafa Akkad at this point, he became the guy. He owned this thing outright. Nobody else was involved. He was the ultimate, the one ultimately signing the check and being the guy to bring Michael Myers back. And, like we talked about, unfortunately, he passed away in 2005. I still remember that, dude. Like, I remember, so mom and dad's house, dad's office had the computer. We'd go on. We'd be looking at, whatever we were looking at on there.
Arrow in the Head and Joe Blow. I remember those were.
Yeah, Arrow in the Head, Joe Blow. But we would also just go look at like horror masks, and we were constantly looking up like horror shit. But I still remember logging into, I don't know if it was HalloweenMovies.com or what it was at that time, but it was like the official web page of the Halloween franchise. And I remember seeing the thing that Mustafa had been killed in this terrorist attack in Jordan. And I was like, holy shit. It was if I remember correctly, it was his daughter's wedding. I believe his daughter was also killed. The bride was also killed. Just this horrible thing that happened, I believe, at a hotel, this bombing. But I still remember that day. I couldn't tell you exactly, obviously, what day it was, but I remember when it happened thinking, wow, this is going to affect and change the franchise. So very, very unfortunate there. Number 13, shot in March 1988 in Salt Lake City, Utah. This is kind of written weird. So the film was shot in March of 1988 in Salt Lake City, Utah. They had to import leaves and pumpkins in order to make it look like autumn. So, March in Utah probably looks very similar to October, as does like in Minnesota. March in Minnesota, minus the snow, probably looks somewhat similar to October. The leaves are gone, off the trees. It's very dead looking, gray skies, that kind of thing. This was a great place to shoot this film. I believe they shot 4, 5, and 6 all in Salt Lake or around that area. And it was fantastic. Besides the mountains in the background, because, Illinois, I don't think there's any mountains in Illinois. Besides the mountains in the background that you can see in some scenes, which is forgivable, that looked fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned it kind of at the start of the show, but like the intro to that film is the best thing. We did it for our Halloween episode as well, our little take on that. Love the vibe of Halloween 4, 5, and 6. They honestly all crush it as far as Haddonfield goes.
Yeah. And Michael Bailiff from Witching Season Films lives out in Utah, and he's done some recreations out there. Pretty cool to see that, see those shot for shot recreations of some of those scenes from Halloween 4. Number 14, Dr. Loomis's burn scar was a source of much strife. The makeup department struggled with what it should look like. They feared that if it was too large or too disfiguring, it would be a distraction. But then Donald Pleasance complained it looked like a fried egg. So they changed it mid-production, and as a result, it changes throughout the movie and messes with continuity. Have you ever noticed this before? That he's totally right. It looks like a freaking fried egg on his face, but then it changes throughout the film. Have you ever noticed that before?
No, I just in my head I'm always like his burns look different in 4, 5, and 6.
Right. Yeah, I don't think he even has any burns in 6, to be honest with you.
No, I think he was just like, I'm old, I'm over.
I'm not sitting in a chair for 8 hours doing makeup before I shoot this film.
I mean, yeah, I know it in the last scene he looks severely messed up. I'm looking for a picture where I can find where he looks like he's got a fried egg on his face.
The one I have pulled up here on this thing is it does. It's like it's round and then it has like this thing in the middle of it. It looks like a freaking fried egg. I had read this that he had complained about it looking like a fried egg, like mid-production. And that they had changed it. So now when I watch Halloween 4, it's all I can see is this freaking fried egg on the side of his face. But number 15, according to Sasha Jensen, so this is the character of Brady, Sasha Jensen, the sex scene between his characters. I'm sorry, I got distracted with sex scene. The sex scene between his character and Kelly, who's played by Kathleen Kinmont, was the first scene either of them shot for the film. Can you imagine that showing up day one and being like, all right, so here's what I need you to do. See that fire over there? You see that couch over there? We're going to turn down these lights, and I want you guys to pretend like you're doing the dirty. Oh, by the way, this is, this is Kathleen. Go ahead and shake hands. Okay, now take your clothes off and get on the couch. Could you imagine that?
No, that's, I mean, on one hand, I'm sure he was like, guys, had the best first day of work ever.
Yeah.
But totally. On the other hand, like, yeah, I always, whenever I see a sex scene, I'm always like, I can't imagine having to film this stuff. I can't imagine being like married to somebody who has to film this shit.
Sorry, babe. I got to do some things at work that you're probably not gonna be real proud of, but
filming a scene with Megan Fox, but don't worry, I'm thinking of you the whole time. No, it's I can't imagine. No, that's a wild first day. And like everybody on the cast is, this is Halloween, right? What are we doing?
All right. Continuing on with the same subject. So Kathleen Kinmont stated that they did actually shoot a version of that scene where she was seen totally topless on camera, but for some reason it wound up being cut from the final movie. So a lot of people out there completely disappointed by hearing this news, I'm sure. But apparently that was filmed. Kind of surprising because horror movies tend to have nudity in them. And like you think about all of the films, I guess Halloween 3, they didn't show Stacy's, anything. But although you could see her freaking, I'm just going to say it. You could see her bush through the glass door in the shower scene.
I'm gonna need to check that out again in Halloween 3. I don't know if I noticed that. Maybe I did. I know you see a good glimpse at Dan Chalice's just caked up ass.
Tight Dan Chalice ass.
Just a smooth ass too.
Yeah.
No, I'm cool with this. I think like Halloween 4 in general is like a little less in your face with a lot of things. I like that it's subtle in most of its stuff. Like it's not over the top bloody, gory. It's not like over the top swearing like you get with Rob Zombie's movies. And yeah, no nudity. I know that's a huge problem for some people. And the good news is you can watch 99% of other horror films and you'll be just fine.
Exactly. Number 17. Originally, Michael Myers was played by Tom Morga, but was replaced by George P. Wilbur, who was chosen, quote unquote, because of his walk. So Tom Morga does have several scenes in the film. I know he is the bandaged Michael Myers. He's the Michael Myers that is rocking in the rocking chair when Kathleen Kinmont's character looks down and discovers that the sheriff's deputy is sitting there dead. And he has a couple others, but so he was replaced by George Wilbur, who is without question one of my favorite Michael Myers. He walked a little weird in part 4. I like the way he walked better and moved in part 6. But he had replaced Tom Morga, which is pretty interesting. Number 18. Sorry, did you have something on that?
Well, I don't want to steal your thunder. You might have this written down. Another thing about George Wilbur.
Yeah.
Go ahead then. Yeah, I mean,
No, go for it. Go. No.
I didn't realize until this book that George Wilbur, much like Christopher Durand, didn't go back and watch 1 and 2 to study to be Michael Myers, which is interesting because I think it shows a lot more in Christopher Durand's performance that he's bringing his own thing. I thought George Wilbur, to me, when I watch Halloween 4, it feels like Michael Myers' movement to me.
Right. Yeah, I did. I guess I did. I may have known that or didn't remember it, but you and I had the chance to meet George back probably 5 or 6 years ago. Super nice dude. Very. I felt like very like grandfathery kind of vibes that he gave me. And I remember when I told him that I think I said, "You're my favorite Michael Myers," which isn't necessarily a lie. Nick Castle is the OG. He's always going to be the best, but truly, George Wilbur probably is my second favorite Michael for sure. And I remember him, he had this look like, wow, he was almost like touched by it that I said that, because I'm sure it wasn't something that he hears a ton of, but it's the truth. I did like how he portrayed that character. Number 18, speaking of Dwight Little always felt that Michael Myers was motivated by a genuine attempt to quote unquote connect with his niece, but he just didn't have any way to express himself without killing people. So again, we see this in part 5 when there's this horrid scene of Jamie Lloyd laying in this little girl's coffin, and Michael, she's like, "Let me see," and he takes off the mask, and you get this horrible scene where a tear trickles down Michael's face before she reaches out to touch him, and he flips out and whatever. Terrible scene. I don't necessarily dislike the idea of wanting to connect with his niece, but I do like the idea better that he's not trying to connect with her. He's trying to kill her because it is part of his family line that he's trying to destroy. I like that idea way better.
I think the way that it was played out in H2O with the hand coming out, I always love that trope of like, what is Michael's intention with his family? Is there like a romantic sexual thing going on? Is it like a compassion family thing going on? Or does he want to murder everybody in his family? And yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think he wants to murder everybody in his family, but he knows that there's some conflict there, and you see it all in that last scene of H2O.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Number 19, Donald Pleasance was 69 years old at the time of production, and he reportedly had a hard time with many of the night shoots required for the film. He often complained about being cold and tired. Dude, I'm not 69 years old, but I'd be bitching about it being cold and being tired too, because, I mean, that's just how it works, right? So I don't blame the dude for being tired and crabby and cold. I know Danielle Harris talked about, I've heard in other interviews her talk about how she could always smell something on his breath, and that she learned later as she got older was that it was bourbon or whiskey, or she said something like that, or brandy is what it was, brandy, that she learned later that it was brandy that was coming off his breath. So he had to stay warm somehow. I mean, what do you expect? He's 69, let
He's
the
out
dude
there
have
drinking
some fun.
with the Reverend.
Man. Number 20, the production ordered. Okay, so this one's jacked up. And we've talked about this before, but this is jacked up. Number 20, the production ordered 6 William Shatner masks to be used for Michael Myers, but when they arrived, they were pink with blonde hair. I don't think they were really pink, but they did have they had a weird pinkish skin tone to them. Thus, they had to be repainted white. However, in one scene at the school, the pink mask with blonde hair is visible on screen, which has largely been blamed on a random crew member grabbing the wrong mask. And because it was in the middle of the night and everyone was exhausted, no one noticed. Dude, how does this happen? Like, I don't care. Like, you're telling me there wasn't even like the water boy standing in the background wasn't like, excuse me, wrong mask. You know what I mean? Nobody noticed. Nobody fucking noticed that this dude had blonde hair all of a sudden. There's no way.
I don't buy it either, dude. I think there had to have been a different issue on set. And I don't know if they thought like, oh, the casual movie viewer won't notice this, because yeah, for a long time I didn't notice it, but once you see it, it's like, oh, what the hell? Because there is he's kind of backlit, so the blonde hair can be excused as like the light shining through. But it's just very clearly a different mask. And like, you got people that their whole lives are Michael Myers. At this point, Michael Myers was a big enough icon in Hollywood that they made a big deal out of him coming back. People have an idea of what Michael Myers looks like in their head, and he's not pink with blonde hair.
Terrible. Absolutely stupid. Huge mistake. Huge mistake. The mask was bad enough, and then you give him freaking blonde hair. Number 21, in order to keep Danielle Harris from getting too scared, Michael Myers actor George P. Wilbur would frequently remove his mask in between takes to remind her it was all just pretend. Kind of cool, right? I can see that. Yeah, I can see that being a thing. Number 22, screenwriter Alan B. McElroy had a cameo as one of the state troopers. So this is the scene where the ambulance has rolled into the river. The bus, like Dr. Loomis says, the bus has rolled into the river. And apparently Alan B. McElroy is one of the police officers, which is kind of cool. If I ever wrote a Halloween film, I would sure hope to shit that I could get a cameo in it. That'd be pretty awesome. So good for him. Number 23, while sliding off the roof, Ellie Cornell, who played Rachel, was cut on the stomach by an exposed staple. She had to be stitched up and immediately returned to filming. That sucks.
Yeah, that's just like the difference between filming a movie in the 80s and filming in 2024. Somebody's going away. Somebody's going to go to the hospital for 6 weeks now.
Right.
You're not going to go back to work immediately.
No, exactly. Number 24, while filming the scene at the end where Jamie runs around at night screaming for help, neighbors actually called the police. So I had heard this as well from another interview with Danielle Harris that this little girl was running around and neighbors could hear this girl screaming for help and that people were actually calling the police. I almost wonder, I bet that's not the first or the last time that happened on one of these sets.
No, but I gotta go. Good on anybody that called the cops in that situation. There are some times in movies like that where people are screaming for help on the street, and people are like, "No, let's close the blinds. This is annoying." Mm-hmm. I always am like, "Why wouldn't anybody just call for help in that situation?" But good on those people.
25, the drugstore where Jamie buys her costume will later be seen in The Sandlot and Stephen King's The Stand. So I was, The Sandlot was right up my alley when I was a kid. That movie probably came out when I was like 9 or 10 years old. I played baseball growing up. I always watched that film before baseball season started, even up until like through high school. And I still love that movie. But yeah, dude, Vincent Drugstore, the exact same thing, the exact same drugstore, which is still there, by the way. You can still go to Vincent's Drugstore, was also used in other films, which is kind of cool to see. Number 26, originally Jamie was supposed to kill Rachel at the end just after she got out of the shower. However, it was changed to Jamie's adopted mother. And of course, Rachel's post-shower death was eventually used in Halloween 5. So I'm a little torn. Probably one of my least favorite parts of this film, I'll be honest with you, is the last minute or two. I don't like the fact that this evil supposedly transferred, from Michael to Jamie, and that Jamie was almost going to be like carrying the torch. Some people might go, well, wait a second. Don't you like Halloween Ends? Yes, I do. But at the end of the day, Michael killed Corey. So it really wasn't a thing. Like in this, Jamie was supposed to like take everything to the next movie, or like that was going to be it for Michael. Michael was dead. He got blasted to hell with, 1,000 rounds of whatever they were shooting him with. And like Jamie was going to be the killer. I don't like that idea at all. I'm glad they did away with it. They found a really weird kind of loophole way, or really weird way to make it work for part 5 and to explain away what happened, but not a fan of that. Not a fan. The last 2 minutes sucked. I'm not a fan.
They've done this a couple times now, whether it be like even Laurie Strode and Rob Zombie's H2, they kind of make her out to be like the next step of Michael Myers. And then at the end of Halloween 2018, I remember walking away from the movie theater. The last shot is Allison holding the knife, and it zooms in on that. And I remember talking to you being like, God, I hope they're not doing like a Halloween 4 with this.
Right.
And they didn't, but they did their own thing later on, like you mentioned.
Yep. Yeah. Not a fan of the end of Halloween 4. I think they could have done something different, but whatever. It's water under the bridge. We've moved on. Number 27, according to Danielle Harris, her stunt double did the infamous stabbing scene at the end because they felt it would be too intense for a child actor. Makes sense. Makes
That's
sense.
fair.
Number 28, a lot of fans were disappointed at the overall lack of blood and gore, especially after how violent Halloween 2 was. According to those involved, that was largely a decision by Mustafa Akkad, who wanted to craft a more suspenseful movie. So, kind of taking back or going back to the original 1978 film where you really didn't see much for blood, right? You saw, obviously, at the beginning, you saw Judith Myers. She got, stabbed. Saw the blood there. You saw a little bit of blood on Laurie's arm when she got slashed with a knife. But otherwise, you really don't get a lot of blood. And they did the opposite of that. Halloween 2, not that there's a ton of gore, but there is a lot more blood and gore and things like that in Halloween 2. But they, Mustafa Akkad at this point kind of wanted to drive, go back to that original John Carpenter idea that there's some mystery there. We don't need to see a lot of blood, a lot of gore to make this a horror film. And I'll be honest, I kind of like it. I think that's part of the reason why I'm not huge on the Rob Zombie films is I think they just overdo the gore and overdo the blood too much. It's just like, man, I just feel like I'm watching just like nothing but blood and gore sometimes with that. And to me, blood and gore does not make a horror film. If I didn't see any blood or gore, I would still think something could be scary. So kind of interesting that they went this avenue. What's your thoughts there?
I'm under the same camp. I don't need blood and gore. I'm not here to watch a roller coaster. I want to see that suspense. I think that's exactly what they went after. That being said, I just watched a movie I will never watch again called Skinamarink. If anybody's a fan of that, let me know. I want to understand what the hell you saw that I didn't. At that movie, I was begging for blood or just any sort of action. So I get it.
Yeah. I made it into Skinamarink about 15 minutes and turned it off. I was like, this is not a film for me, and I'm not going to waste the next hour and a half watching this or however long it is. But
let me tell you, the next hour and a half looked just like that 15 minutes. It was ridiculous.
Oh, that's a hard pass. Pass. Number 29, continuing on with sort of the same topic of the lack of blood. Number 29, as a result, they even did a day of quote unquote blood filming reshoots just to add more shots of blood to spice it up. Okay. Kind of, they wanted to say, hey, let's get a little bit in there. The thing is, too, you think about at this point, you're competing with really two other franchises, right? You're competing with Friday the 13th and you're competing with The Nightmare on Elm Street. Those were really the big three. Yeah, of course, you had, Texas Chainsaw Massacre in there as well, where we got a couple films that had happened around that time. But really, they're competing with Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on Elm Street. Friday the 13th, incredibly gory, incredibly bloody, a lot of slashing, a lot of deaths, right? Friday the 13th, more special effects related deaths, like, the stairs eating somebody or the TV sucking somebody in or whatever it might be. So I'm sure they were trying to find like that happy medium, right? Trying to find what was going to be enough to keep those fans who wanted that sort of thing with a horror film, engaged and entertained, but also not wanting to drive away other people who really don't want to see that thing. So I think ultimately it was the right amount. This film did the right amount. Number 30, Halloween 4 was the first movie to credit Michael Myers as Michael Myers and not The Shape. Very interesting. Very interesting. Number 31, George P. Wilbur cited Kelly's kill. So this is Kathleen Kinmont, where she gets the shotgun jammed through her stomach and she gets pinned up against the wall. George P. Wilbur cited Kelly's kill as his favorite to do since he got to pin her to the wall with a shotgun. Kathleen Kinmont, however, said the scene was very challenging because of the difficulties with the harness that she had to use. So Michael has always been known to, stick people to the wall. This is a great death scene. I can't remember. We talked about our top 10 favorite death scenes. I don't remember if this was one of them. If it didn't make my top 10, it's definitely in like my top 15. I really like this death scene. It's a classic death scene, and very, very creative the way that they did this.
Yeah, that was one thing I wanted to mention too with the blood. It's like you're still getting some pretty brutal kills in this movie. But yeah, maybe there's not blood, but like, yeah, she got a shotgun rammed through her chest. That's pretty hardcore, man. That's pretty metal.
Well, and the other thing is too, is I think when, going back to the first time that I saw that film, I wish I could remember, but I'm sure a small part of me went, wait, is this dude going to jam this shot or is he going to shoot this shotgun? Is this what's going to happen? Glad they obviously didn't do that, but we got him to, jam that into her, which was very cool for a horror film. Number 32, after filming Wrapped, Danielle Harris wore her infamous clown costume to go trick-or-treating in Halloween of 1988. She would eventually sell the costume to a fan. So how cool is that? Like they were like, hey, keep the clown costume, kid. It's not going to fit anybody else. And then she wore it trick or treating. And it'd be really awesome to see that thing today. Like I would love to know who has it, who owns it, what they're doing with it. Because you want to talk about a really iconic piece of movie memorabilia from this franchise. That one would definitely stand out as probably like a top 5 because that clown costume was just so iconic.
Yeah, Josh, Shape NC, get on that one. That's got to go on the table.
Exactly. Get that up in that man cave that we're all jealous of.
Yeah.
Number 33, Halloween 4 was nominated for Best Horror Film at the Saturn Awards in 1990, but lost to Beetlejuice. So I don't know why it went from 1988 to 1990, but according to this, it was nominated and lost to Beetlejuice. Kind of strange that it wouldn't have been. Maybe they didn't have Saturn Awards in 88 and 89. Saturn Awards. I never even heard of Saturn Awards, but
no.
Apparently lost to Beetlejuice, which is another good film. I wouldn't put it above Halloween 4, but I wouldn't even call Beetlejuice a horror film, to be honest with you. It's kind of a horror comedy, I guess, but whatever. Number 34, the film grossed $17.7 million on a $5 million budget. So they made a ton of money with this movie. And obviously we saw them go, all right, people want to see Michael. Michael's back. We're going to do this again. And we got Halloween 5 the following year, which is really cool to think about. Like we haven't gotten that. We just got that obviously with Halloween. What did we get? Halloween 2018.
Kills and Ends.
Kills and Ends. Yes, that's right. Thank you. Where we got this back-to-back years. Hopefully we can get that again someday, but we obviously got it in part 4 or 5 as well, which is pretty cool. And then finally, last but not least, number 35 on this list is, while it received generally negative reviews and didn't quite recapture the magic many horror fans wanted from a Halloween film, Halloween film was cited as the movie that best captures the spirit and feeling of autumn in the Halloween season. We already talked about that. There's no question. It really does that better than any other Halloween film out there. I would argue, in my opinion, part 6 is next in line there, Halloween 4 and then 6 and then probably the trilogy. But man, the absolute like autumn feel, Halloween feel, the vibes that you get from this film are unlike anything else you get throughout the rest of the franchise.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before. You and I grew up in a farm town. That is how Halloween feels to me in my brain. When I think of waking up on Halloween morning, going to school or whatever, that drive to school, it was like literally the opening of Halloween 4. And that's one of the only scenes like that really brings it in for me. That and the Halloween tree opening is just the two. I got to watch both of those on Halloween.
Right. Yeah, Halloween Tree is amazing. If you've not seen Halloween Tree, it's great for kids, great for adults, and a classic that you and I obviously both watched growing up, and we still watch to this day. But yeah, so those are 35 facts that you may not, there's a few more, I guess, in there, but 35 facts that you may or may not have known about Halloween 4. We're doing this on the piggyback off of this news that Dwight Little is apparently interested in doing another Halloween film. As an already pitched an idea, apparently, of bringing Jamie Lloyd back to the screen, whether that's in a film or a TV show. Either way, we're excited as hell. And if there is any more news, you guys can be rest assured that we are going to be the ones to be able to dive deep into it and get you as much information on that as we can. But that's going to do it for episode 53. We're in our second year now officially. This thing just keeps going. We're so excited to have you guys here. If you've not subscribed, please subscribe. Hit that like button, the follow, notifications. Do it all. Hit us up on Instagram at halloween.lives.podcast. Let us know what you think of the show. And we'll be back next week for episode number 54. I'm Blaine Duncan, and that is my brother Austin. And we'll see you guys next time.